He was born on a refugee train to Holocaust survivors and grew up with a single burning vow that the Jewish people would never again be powerless. This vow would transform Meir Dagan from a decorated soldier into one of the most formidable and feared intelligence chiefs of the modern era. As the head of Israel's Mossad, he unleashed a relentless shadow war of sabotage and assassination, primarily aimed at crippling Iran's nuclear ambitions. He was an innovator, a predator, and a man who dragged the art of espionage into a new, more lethal age. Yet his story took one final shocking turn when he retired and became the fiercest critic of the very government he had once armed. This is the story of the man who put the knife back between Mossad's teeth. For more profiles on the hidden figures who shape history, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The story of Meir Dagan does not begin in a hospital or a home, but in the rattling chaos of a refugee train lumbering across the Soviet Union. It was 1945, and the embers of the Second World War were still cooling, leaving behind a continent of ghosts and displaced souls. His parents, Polish Jews who had survived the horrors of the Holocaust, were fleeing westward, seeking any refuge from the graveyard of their past. In this metallic womb of transit and uncertainty, Meir was born. His very first moments were steeped in the themes that would define his life survival against all odds, and a journey toward a safe harbor for the Jewish people. This heritage was not just a line in a biography. It was the psychological bedrock of his existence. He grew up breathing the second-hand air of trauma, listening to whispered stories of unspeakable loss and a world that had tried to erase his family from existence. 5 years later, the Dagan family arrived in the newly formed state of Israel, settling in a small town near Tel Aviv. For them, Israel was not just a country. It was a promise, a defiant answer to centuries of persecution. Young Meir absorbed this atmosphere completely. He was raised on the ethos of the Sabra, the native-born Israeli tough on the outside, and dedicated to the soil beneath his feet. But beneath that tough exterior was a deeply personal vow forged from his parents' memories. He would later recount a story that became central to his personal legend, seeing a photograph of his own grandfather on his knees, his beard about to be cut off by Nazi sympathizers. In that image of humiliation, Dagan saw the ultimate failure of a people unable to defend themselves. He swore that never again would a Jew be brought to their knees. This single searing image became the compass for his life's work. His path was not one of commerce or academia. It was to become a shield for his people, a weapon they had so desperately lacked. When he turned 18 in 1963, there was no question about his future. He enlisted in the Israel Defense Forces, seeking out its most demanding and prestigious branch, the paratroopers. The red beret of the paratroopers was a symbol of excellence and daring, and Dagan was a natural fit. He was not a physically imposing man, but he possessed an intense, unblinking focus and a ferocious will that set him apart. He moved through the ranks with a quiet determination, his leadership style defined by a readiness to lead from the front and a creative, almost predatory mind for battlefield tactics. He participated in the Six-Day War in 1967, fighting in the Sinai Peninsula, and gaining first-hand experience in conventional warfare. Yet, it was in the messy, unconventional conflicts that followed, where his unique talents would truly shine, shaping him into the legendary figure he would become. The early 1970s saw Israel facing a new kind of threat in the Gaza Strip. The area was a powder keg of insurgency, with militants launching attacks and then melting back into the dense warrens of refugee camps. Conventional military patrols were ineffective, like clumsy giants swatting at ghosts. It was in this environment that the IDF decided to form a new kind of unit, one that could fight the enemy on its own terms. It was called Sayeret Raimon, a special forces team designed to operate undercover, and the military command knew exactly who should lead it. Meir Dagan, then a young officer, was given command. He was tasked with dismantling the militant networks from the inside out, a job that required cunning and a complete disregard for the traditional rules of engagement. Under Dagan's command, Sayeret Rimon became a legend. He transformed his soldiers into masters of disguise and deception. They would dress as locals, driving beat-up cars and adopting the mannerisms of the very people they were hunting. They learned to think like their enemy, to anticipate their movements, and to strike with lethal precision when least expected. Dagan's approach was radical and incredibly hands-on. He did not command from a distant headquarters. He was on the ground often, in disguise himself, leading the raids. He fostered an atmosphere of complete trust and brutal efficiency. The unit's mission was simple: to create a sense of pervasive fear among the militants, to make them feel that an Israeli soldier could be anywhere behind any face in the crowd. This period cemented Dagan's reputation as a man who would do whatever it took to secure a victory. His methods were undeniably effective, and the insurgency in Gaza was crippled. But they also earned him a reputation for being ruthless, a man willing to blur the lines to eliminate a threat. He was not interested in fanfare or public accolades. His satisfaction came from the mission's success and the knowledge that he was fulfilling the vow he had made to himself years earlier. The lessons he learned in the dusty alleyways of Gaza, leading his shadow warriors, were formative. He mastered the art of the targeted strike, the value of deep intelligence, and the psychological impact of relentless, unpredictable pressure. These were the skills of a ghost, a warrior perfectly suited for the dark and clandestine world of espionage he was destined to one day lead. His years away from the front lines had done little to soften him. When the call came in 2002 from Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, a man who was himself a titan of Israel's military history, it was a meeting of minds. Sharon saw in Meir Dagan the same blunt, unwavering focus on security that had defined his own career. The Mossad, Israel's vaunted intelligence agency, had grown cautious, in recent years bogged down by bureaucracy and risk aversion. Sharon wanted the old Mossad back, the one of myth and legend, and he gave Dagan a simple, chilling mandate to put the knife back between the agency's teeth. Dagan accepted without hesitation. The man who had once vowed that no Jew would ever be brought to his knees again was now being handed the sharpest weapon in the nation's arsenal. He arrived at Mossad headquarters not as a bureaucrat but as a combat commander, ready to reshape the organization into an instrument of his formidable will. The culture shock within the agency was immediate and intense. Dagan had little patience for lengthy analytical reports or theoretical threat assessments. He believed that intelligence was useless unless it was acted upon. He reoriented the entire organization toward one singular purpose: direct action. Operations became the priority. Agents who had spent years writing memos were now pushed to devise and execute daring, covert missions. He broke down internal walls, demanding that the intelligence collection divisions work hand in glove with the operational units. He wanted a fluid, relentless organization that could strike its enemies anywhere in the world with speed and deniability. His central focus, the obsession that would define his entire tenure, was the growing shadow of Iran's nuclear program. To Dagan, an atomic bomb in the hands of the apocalyptic leaders in Tehran was the ultimate existential threat, the modern equivalent of the forces that had sent his parents fleeing for their lives. Under his direction, Mossad launched a multifaceted shadow war against Iran, a campaign of unprecedented audacity. One of its most dramatic and brutal fronts was the targeted assassination of Iran's top nuclear scientists. The world began to read stunning news reports from the heart of Tehran. In broad daylight on busy city streets, a motorcycle would pull up alongside a scientist's car. A silent figure on the back would attach a magnetic bomb to the door, and moments later a fatal explosion would rip through the vehicle. This happened again and again, a series of precise, terrifying strikes that seemed impossible to stop. Each assassination was a masterpiece of intelligence and operational planning, sending a wave of paranoia through Iran's scientific establishment. The message was clear and terrifying: we can reach you anywhere, anytime. The program was designed not only to eliminate key personnel, but to psychologically cripple the entire endeavor, making any scientist think twice about contributing to the nuclear project. This was not just a campaign of brute force. Dagan championed a new frontier of warfare. Mossad is widely believed to have been a key player in the development and deployment of Stuxnet, a highly sophisticated computer worm. This was not merely a hacking tool, it was a digital missile. It secretly infiltrated the computer systems controlling Iran's uranium enrichment centrifuges at Natanz, manipulating them to spin out of control and self-destruct, all while feeding false data to the facility's operators who remained oblivious. Mysterious explosions rocked other sensitive military and research sites across Iran. Dagan was fighting a new kind of war, one where the weapons were computer code and precisely placed explosives of war without a formal declaration or a clear battlefield. His reach extended far beyond Iran. For years, one of the world's most wanted terrorists, Hezbollah's military commander Imad Mughnieh, had eluded capture and assassination. He was a ghost, a master of disguise responsible for countless deaths. Dagan's Mossad patiently hunted him. In 2008, after an exhaustive intelligence effort, they tracked him to a neighborhood in Damascus, Syria. In a meticulously planned operation, a bomb planted in a vehicle's headrest was detonated as Mughnieh walked past, killing him instantly. It was a stunning blow to Hezbollah and a major victory for the agency, reinforcing its global reach. Yet not all of Dagan's audacious plans went off without a hitch. In 2010, a large Mossad team was dispatched to Dubai to eliminate a senior Hamas operative named Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. The mission was a success. Mabhouh was killed in his luxury hotel room, but the assassins were caught on Dubai's extensive network of security cameras. The subsequent release of the footage led to a major international incident, exposing the agents' faces and the forged European passports they used, causing a diplomatic crisis for Israel. The incident was a stark reminder of the high stakes of Dagan's methods, where the line between covert triumph and public embarrassment was razor thin. By the time he stepped down in 2011, no one could doubt that he had fulfilled his mandate. The knife was back, and it was sharper than ever. When Meir Dagan's term as the head of Mossad concluded in 2011, the expectation was that he would follow the well-worn path of his predecessors. He would fade from public view, perhaps taking on a lucrative role in the private sector, his secrets and stories locked away behind a permanent vow of silence. The warrior would finally rest. But Meir Dagan was not built for quiet retirement. The man who had spent a decade operating in the deepest shadows was about to step into the brightest, most uncomfortable spotlight imaginable. He saw a new threat to Israel's security, but this time he believed the threat was coming from within the halls of his own government. As talk grew louder of a potential preemptive military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, a policy championed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Dagan broke his silence in a way that sent shockwaves through the Israeli establishment and across the world. He became the government's most formidable and credible critic. In public forums and interviews, the former spy master systematically dismantled the case for war. His opposition was not born of pacifism. It was rooted in the cold, hard calculus of a master strategist. He famously declared that a military attack on Iran was the stupidest idea he had ever heard. The man who had arguably done more physical damage to the Iranian nuclear program than any other single person was now arguing passionately against bombing it. His reasoning was a real-world distillation of the very doctrine he had perfected at Mossad. A conventional air assault, he argued, would be a strategic catastrophe. It would fail to destroy a program that was already too dispersed and buried too deep underground. Worse, it would rally the Iranian people around their radical regime, giving them a cause and a justification to sprint for a bomb with nationalistic fervor. An attack, he warned, would almost certainly ignite a devastating, multi-front regional war with Hezbollah and its patrons, a conflict Israel would likely have to fight alone with uncertain results. He was, in essence, advocating for his own brand of warfare as the only sensible path forward. He championed the continued use of covert action, the quiet and deniable campaign of sabotage cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations that he had waged so effectively. Why, he asked, would you trade a strategy that was working and carried minimal risk for one that was uncertain to succeed and guaranteed calamitous blowback? His public dissent was an act of profound courage and defiance. He was not just disagreeing on policy, he was challenging the core judgment of the sitting prime minister on the nation's most critical security issue. His words carried immense weight. No one could accuse Meir Dagan of being soft on Iran or naive about the threat it posed. His credibility was unimpeachable, forged over a lifetime of service and sacrifice. His public stand gave political cover to other retired and serving officials in the military and intelligence communities who harbored similar doubts, creating a powerful counter-narrative to the government's drumbeat for war. During these final years, Dagan was fighting another more personal battle. He was diagnosed with liver cancer and his health was failing. His public appearances became less frequent, but all the more powerful. The physical frailty of the man stood in stark contrast to the unyielding strength and clarity of his convictions. He was a warrior to the end, using his reputation and his fading time on earth to fight one last battle for what he believed was the security of his country. He passed away in 2016, leaving behind a legacy as complex and debated as the man himself. To many Israelis, Meir Dagan remains a national hero of the highest order. He was the ultimate guardian, the unsleeping protector who confronted Israel's most dangerous enemies and won. He was the living embodiment of the vow he made as a young man, a fierce shield for his people. He did the hard, dirty work that kept the nation safe, and his successes in crippling the programs of his enemies are the stuff of legend. Yet to others, particularly outside of Israel, his legacy is far more complicated. His name is synonymous with a policy of state-sponsored assassination and a flagrant disregard for national sovereignty. The Dubai operation exposed a willingness to take extreme risks that could and did have serious diplomatic consequences. He is seen as a figure who pushed the ethical boundaries of espionage, creating a darker and more dangerous set of rules for the shadow wars of the 21st century. In the end, these two views are impossible to separate. He was a man who perfected the art of the small secret war in order to prevent a large, catastrophic one. His life's work was a testament to his belief that true strength lay not only in the ferocity of the strike, but in the wisdom to know when not to strike at all. Meir Dagan's legacy is a paradox written in the shadows and debated in the light. He was the protector who employed killing as a tool of statecraft, the strategist who believed that the precise violence of the few could prevent the catastrophic warfare of the many. From the vow made by the son of survivors to the spy master hunting enemies across the globe, and finally to the elder statesman warning against the drums of war, his life was a testament to his unwavering, often brutal commitment to Israel's survival. He reshaped the rules of modern espionage, leaving behind a doctrine that is as controversial as it was effective. His story forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. In a dangerous world, is a figure like Meir Dagan a dark necessity or a dangerous precedent? If you found this deep dive compelling, hit the subscribe button for more stories from the world of intelligence and power.